Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Strive Summit podcast. I'm your host, Alex Hanna. And with me today, I have Jeff Drews. Jeff, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Jeff Drews. I'm one of the co-founders and the president of BIM Technology Management. We're here
And my old boss.
and your old boss here in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Are you still in Wauwatosa?
We just moved into a new office. We're actually having our grand opening party next Thursday. So we went from like a 300 square foot closet to a 650 square foot office to I think we're in a 1,500 square foot office. And we've already we're basically at capacity and kind of looking at how to expand even beyond these doors. It took us about 2 months to get in, and we filled it in less than 2 months.
Wow. Yeah, I think it was April. We were still in the place in Wauwatosa, Milwaukee, the building, and you got the 2 rooms. And you just got the second room, and then now here you're moving again. So that's really great. You guys are expanding quite a bit.
Upstairs to like a 700 or 800 square foot place, and then we moved. Here's funny actually. So when we were in that old place, you always used to talk about like hearing noises and the ghosts and all that.
It's
haunted. So my assistant, Caitlin, she came across a web page where it actually had it listed as like a haunted place, and the messed up part about the whole thing is they have like a picture like looking down the hallway, and no joke, the picture was literally taken right outside of our office. Like I walked around the entire place trying to find another picture that looked identical. Nope, it was
which office?
424.
The one we were in?
Yeah, well, I don't think you were ever in that spot, but
no, that was above. Okay,
on the fourth floor.
So on the story of ghost stories. My experience was the door would open or close on its own, and you guys would be like, nah, stop it, you're hearing things. And I specifically remember walking into that bathroom and hearing a person cough, like a grown man cough, and there's no one in that bathroom.
I'm sure it had nothing to do with the open window or the vents or anything like that.
Okay, look here, Mr. Skeptical. That place is haunted. I'm happy to get out of there. No.
That's funny. No, I actually asked the landlady one time if she ever experienced anything. She's like, no, I've been here for 15 years and I've nothing. Okay.
They just don't like her. Anyways, what are some technology that you're seeing come up that you're really excited to use, or you've been introduced to, or that you're using currently? Software. I know we were getting into laser scanning a little bit.
Most recently we've kind of taken a step back on some of the I don't want to call it gimmicky stuff because it's not gimmicky. Mm-hmm. Like there's practical applications to reality capture and a lot of other things, but we're focusing more on internal like automations and things along those lines. So we actually brought on a couple of programmers recently, and we're actually building out some automations ourselves, kind of piggybacking off of some of the families we developed in the past. Awesome. Just trying to take some of our internal workflows to the next level.
So what kind of like automations have like been revolutionary, I guess, or something you were like, we need to implement this right away?
The big thing for us in electrical is just like, there's a lot of offsets and kicks and a lot of manual placing of elements. We're trying to get it to actually start doing some of the math for us. So instead of us trying to figure out this conduit's at 14 foot, this one's at 12, 1.5. All right, well, what's the math difference there? We just click on one, click on the other, and boom, it places it in there.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're doing like internal tools as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. As far as other softwares and things like that, when you were here, we had just touched on Smartsheet a little bit. Mm-hmm. Now we're starting to utilize it a little bit client-facing. And that's always been one of the big things for me is BIM is awesome as like a tool internally. Field guys utilize it to some extent, but how do we start to get some of that data out of the BIM model and across into the field team? So we're starting to build out like Power BI like dashboards where it's starting to give us like key performance indicators from our models, like what percent populated are we, how many light fixtures are currently populated in this model, like which area are they populated in, so our clients can go into dashboards and literally start ordering that material without having to have a conversation with us at all.
Oh, that's so it's really interesting you bring that up because accountability is something that's like when I talked outsourcing previously, accountability is hard to have if you don't have something like that. I can see that as like a tool for if you're outsourcing to anybody, or even if like uh, I I need BIMTM to do some work for me. It's
Yep.
like a tracker for a owner to say without having to look at it, be like, oh, okay, this is where we're at, or this is progress time. That's really interesting. Actually, I don't know if anything like that really exists today. I mean, did you look at
Even
any softwares beforehand?
um, I think they're. I know Power BI does a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
we didn't. I'm not a programmer, so I don't really. I didn't go down that path. We were looking at like what is the simplest for us. Plus, we were already starting to build like the heart of our organization around Smartsheet. So
Mm-hmm.
we bought a more advanced package that has a way to shift data back and forth between things. So basically, we created an automation with Revit that'll export data into a CSV, and then Smartsheet grabs that data from the CSV and pulls it in.
That so you have like a button. It's just like
Yeah,
share data.
well, so one of the guys on the team, every time we close the Revit model, it exports a CSV. So nobody even has to do anything. It's just doing it on a daily basis for us automatically.
That's incredible. That's a different concept that I've heard. Like I think of I keep saying outsourcing, but I think of holding accountability to the people you hire, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a lot of people that are scared of that. They want to hire someone, but they don't know what they could do or what they're doing or where it's at, and they expect to see an update every week.
Sure.
But the tool like you're creating, essentially, if someone were to say like, oh, by the way, here's a website or a web page or a smart sheet that you
Yeah.
can go and track progress daily or hourly or whatever. Whenever they close it down, it updates,
Yep.
and so you can know deadlines and milestones and hit those and track those accordingly. It's actually pretty cool. That's not something I've heard of before. So
The other
kudos to you,
thing
Jeff.
we're the other thing we're starting to try to do with it is like, so we'll put our submittals up there, so the
Yeah.
clients can give us submittals. We'll put it up in Smartsheet. We can track whether they're approved or not, and then we can actually have the Revit families report out like what size they are, and then we can actually have our clients go through and approve the data that's in the BIM model. This is a 4x2 electrical panel or whatever, and they hit yes, this is approved. Because typically they don't have that data at their fingertips, like
Right.
straight out of the Revit model.
Well, more often than not, owners get a model and they, what do I do with it, right? But you
Right.
give them something that they can interact with. Okay, so does it go backwards? Can I
We
say
can.
yes, do that, and then you see a notification or something pop up while you're working or something like that?
Well, it's not. You can set notifications. So if they go through, there we can add fields that aren't necessarily like attached to
Mm-hmm.
Revit. So they could be just a yes no. Or if they go through and they update like a length parameter, we can push that back into Revit and overwrite the length parameter into Revit. Yeah.
Okay. Uh,
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty cool
pretty
stuff.
epic. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
epic. Awesome.
I mean, it's just like it's similar to like a spreadsheet link through like DI Roots or one of those other ones.
Yeah, but the fact that it's talking back and forth to the model
Right.
is what's incredible. So it's instant. Like ACC
It's
doesn't do it, right? You have to
it's not
publish to
instant. It's you have to kind
you
of tell it,
close it,
but
right?
right. Yeah.
But even ACC, you can sync and do that also, but as soon as you publish is when it's visible. And like an owner, I would think in an owner standpoint, I'd want to see everything all the time. I want to track my project, right?
Right.
I want to know if BIMTM's doing what I want them to do, or no, I need to change the size of this panel, right? So that's a concept that I don't think is people are really taking control of. Everyone's into AI right now, you know,
Right. And
and
yeah, it's good, but it's,
yeah, it's only as good as what you use it
right.
for and your inputs and outputs and there's a lot of AI buzz going around. Everyone does AI, but there's some script behind it that's not learning. It's
Right.
just a script, right?
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. Have you guys? Can you explain the why you kind of backed away from reality capture a little bit? Because you didn't want to call it gimmicky, but I'm curious of the decision making.
I think for us, when we first started BIMTM, we wanted to be like an end-to-end BIM solution. We do everything. Um, but taking a step back from it, we realized that we can't be an expert in everything. So we chose like a certain industry that we wanted to dial in on, which was the construction side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically have two main groups now, which is our construction management group that like does MEP coordination for general contractors and help push the design forward. And then our MEP coordination group. Yes, there's other things that like extend into it, like reality capture and all these other things. But there's companies out there that they just specialize in reality capture. So we'd rather partner with a company who's an expert in their field than to do something mediocre, I guess.
Right. No, that's great. So you guys found a niche and you stuck with it. That's good. I know.
Exactly.
I know. So when I started, the growth was crazy. Seeing the amount of feedback and stuff we were getting and hiring and stuff. I think when I left, there was 7, including me. How many you got now, employees?
Um, we just got like 2 accepted offers this week. I think we're at 32.
Holy cow!
Yeah, we're
That's
still
that's
hiring.
incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
we're looking
Who,
at
who,
adding some project managers and project assistants and things like that now, trying to get our BIM folks doing BIM instead of some of the other things that they don't need to be
clerical
doing.
work.
Right. We're having
It's
those tough conversations that are tough sometimes.
the we want you to stop doing clerical work and just be the BIM
Or
guy, or vice versa.
this isn't in our scope of work, or
Hmm.
this, that, or the other thing.
That's an interesting concept too, and we're going to talk about that about BIM creep because um, I know that's something that everyone struggles with. I mean, I saw it, you saw it, and it's how do you control scope creep, right?
Mm.
And how do you say, look, I know you called me, but I'm going to charge you because you called me, or I know I helped you out with this one thing, but you called me 3 times now this past week. How do I fix that? Or you know, I want you to put all the lights in, and then I need you to attach the conduit, and then oh by the way, can you tell me the lumens of the lights and how many are there, and all that other stuff that adjusts to it. And not all
Well,
that's built out in the BIM plan. So how are you guys
right.
handling that?
And that's part of the reason why we wanted to go to this smart sheet like dashboard so that we didn't have to do all this extra stuff. It was just kind of at their fingertips. Because I don't think a lot of project managers and like general foreman or whoever's on the other end of things understands how difficult it is to get this data out sometimes. It's just click, click, done, right? No, it's how do we filter the data down into a way that is usable. So if we're setting up our families and everything from the get-go that just puts everything into a dashboard where they can pick it out themselves, you don't really have to worry about scope creep quite as much. There's always that worry,
There's
but
always some, yeah. No,
yeah,
that's really interesting. Yeah, that's actually I didn't think about that. Smart sheets could actually combat that scope creep because they could say, yeah, here's the information. So you're
go
using
get it.
actual like item elements and building those elements and families for the content. You're not just taking out of the box stuff.
So we're on the like we're starting down this journey right now. We've
Mm-hmm.
proven the concept. We developed our own like internal issue tracker, and as you populate it in the project, it'll export those issues into a document essentially, and then we can keep track of where they're at and assign them internally, similar to the issue tracker that ACC has built into it. However, it doesn't matter what hub or um, it doesn't matter whose hub we're on. It works across the board.
Hmm.
So it's the proof of concept that's going to lead into all these other
Yeah.
applications to use it.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, like I said, revolutionary idea. Congrats, that's great.
I don't know if it's revolutionary, but
I
it's
I think I think there's a lot of people out there that might think that they don't know how to explain BIM data to clients and owners.
yeah,
I think
it's
of
tough.
apps like Revisto. Like Revisto's awesome. It does this crazy thing for the field that people can go back and forth, but what does the owner see?
Right.
Or what is the person paying for it see? How do you? I mean, there's ACC and there's documents and stuff, and but how do you represent building data from the model to someone who can read a document and know what it is? Right?
That
Turn
was
the
always
model into a
the
submittal.
that was always the big thing when we would try to get general foreman and project managers to like QC stuff that we're sending over. They're like, how do I know if this is right? How do I know how big this is? How do I know? Well, now you can see it yourself.
Yeah, pull it up on your iPad.
Right. Look
That's
at
awesome.
it. Look at your submittal. Tell me if it's good to go. Sign off on it. Move forward.
That's great.
So,
Okay,
so
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you
go
first. No, you first.
ahead. All right. I don't even remember what I was going to say, so I'm done here.
Good. Now I'm going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about your journey to the position you're at now,
Okay.
to today's date. So why don't you kind of give an overview, or if you want to start way back when, like I had Brian Dilly, right? He wanted to be an electrician in 8th grade and wrote a paper. That was it, set his path.
Really?
And so, yeah, a paper of all things. And Brian, if you're listening, you're a nerd and I love you. So what was the path you went down that got you to the point you're at today?
Trying to think. The first time I ever remember doing anything in this space was in high school. I took a AutoCAD class. And the funny thing is, it was like architectural drafting or something along those lines. And the whole reason I took the class is because we could get on a computer and play like Unreal Tournament or something like that. And I totally didn't take it seriously. And I think I got like a C or a C plus in it. But thinking back on it, like I did enjoy aspects of it. So I took a second or a third class. And then after high school, I went to like a local technical school for architectural drafting, and I ended up dropping out because, I mean, to be frank, school was not for me. I got bored. I don't know. It didn't motivate me.
Yeah. So were you looking to go to like architecture
Originally?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Originally, but then I started taking classes and they're teaching you about the history of building materials and all this other stuff that like didn't interest me at all.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then I just dropped out because it wasn't for me. Then after that, I moved down to Florida and I started doing landscaping and working for like restaurants and things like that. And I was like, I got to do something with my life. So I went to a local like trade school, and I picked up drafting. I basically walked in there having no idea what I wanted to do. Like walked from like booth to booth for the different like career opportunities that we had.
Oh, so you had a career fair?
Yeah, I went to a career fair. Yeah.
Okay.
And at that point, I was like really into cars and motorcycles and that kind of thing. So I was like, shit, I'm gonna go for mechanical design. I'm gonna be the next Harley Davidson designer or something like that. So then I started going to school for it, and there was basically no industry for mechanical design in the area that I lived in Florida. So I took I did an internship doing rebar detailing at a local construction company. It was boring as hell, but I mean, I liked it, and I think part of what it was, I liked using the tools, and I've always been a gamer growing up, like playing like strategy games and that kind of thing. So I was always trying to figure out how I can do something with the least amount of clicks. So I was like cranking out some of these drawings faster than they'd never seen before. And he's like, you really should be teaching people this or whatever. So in school, I started actually like helping the other kids to learn how to do things. And they sent me to like a local competition for mechanical design and that kind of thing. Yeah. And I ended up taking first in the state of Florida for Skills USA. And then after that, they sent us to nationals. And I think I took like 13th in the nation, and my computer died halfway through the competition.
Tell me you have those trophies.
I have some. They're like little ribbons. I have them somewhere. Yeah. It was a cool experience. But the moral of the story is, mechanical design was my passion. When I finished school, I had a choice to stay on the construction side of things or to start doing mechanical design. And basically, it was like, take this job at $13 an hour or take this job at $18 an hour. And I was like, I went with the money. So So that's how I kind of started in the AEC industry. And then that first job right out of school, they were like, "Hey, we just bought this program, Revit. Do you want to learn it?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?"
What
Okay,
year was that? What year did you get introduced to Revit? Do you remember what version of Revit?
2005 or six or something like that.
Oh,
2000.
okay. So you were early Revit.
It was early when there was actually different versions of Revit too. So I learned
Yeah.
Revit structure because I was working at a structural engineering firm at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But they actually had like Revit architecture and then I think Revit systems too, which was hot trash at that point, if I remember correct. But
We'll talk about that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, all of them were very trashy compared to very buggy compared to how things are now.
Yeah, I would say like 2015 was the start of something better.
Yeah.
So you were
Well,
in it. What?
2009, 2010 was a big shift on the structural side, at least.
That's true. Okay. Continue. I'm sorry. So you're working at a
Also,
structural firm. You're learning Revit. Where are you at now?
yeah, like literally at that point, I think it was a Monday or something like that, and they were like, "We got a deadline on a Friday. Good luck." And that's essentially how we started learning Revit. There was nobody to ask questions to. There's a handful of us asking questions back and forth in the forums, but I think that's what really set me up as like a self starter and like just diving in there and figuring things out myself. And the out of the box families weren't really good at that point, so you were forced to build your own. There was no like space to go download things. You either had them or you either created them or you just dealt with the crap that you were dealt with at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to learn everything there was to know about Revit, and that's kind of that's kind of the journey I went down at that point.
Okay, so you're learning about Revit. You're in structural design,
Structural
and
for a
you got.
long time.
So how long were you in structural for?
I'll have to pull up my resume, but probably like 10 years.
Okay, because like you're a family creating wizard compared to most people I know about family creations, and I don't dabble at all. So was it structural that had you create so these families, or was it the beginning that said you had to create a family that you just learned so much about it?
I worked at a company that had I worked at a company that was probably leading, at least in the Midwest, on the AEC side, and I had a guy who showed me like how the formulas worked and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it was like the 2007 2008 recession, and I got laid off. I was like one of the last. I think there was 12 people, and I think I was one of three remaining at the end. That's how bad things were.
Wow.
And at that point, I I had like a month or two where I didn't have a job. I was trying to figure out what to do, and I made a decision for myself at that point that I was going to make myself so valuable that nobody would ever want to get rid of me again. So literally in my free time, I'm building families and I'm making like dream jobs and things like that, just trying to figure out every little thing there is to know about Revit. Then shortly after that, I got a job as a BIM manager for a company um, who was trying to implement BIM. And from that point on, I was pretty much just doing BIM management or BIM director roles.
Okay. So you're BIM management, BIM director. What are some struggles and stuff you face getting people into it? Because a lot of times there's a lot of people that want to convert to Revit or don't have the time to or don't think they can to. And I'm sure you got hired on one to help implement standards and also to get everyone on board. Like you were probably
Mm-hmm.
part of teams that still had CAD that were using, correct?
Yeah, a handful of times.
So how did you get that cohesiveness to be like, okay, we're going to do BIM. This is how it works. And what were the struggles with that?
I mean, the struggle that stands out the most is everybody tries to use Revit like it's CAD. So trying to break that mindset that we're not trying to replicate what we're doing in CAD right now. We're trying to develop something brand new. So through the years, my strategy's changed a little bit, and it's trying to help them identify what their goals are from moving from AutoCAD into Revit. Like, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And if they're like, well, because we're trying to get smarter, then it's like, okay, so why are we trying to be counterproductive in what Revit wants to do to get smarter? Like, don't get focused on the look of a schedule or something like that when it's really more about the data.
Yep. Yeah.
And
I learned don't be a tool to the tool, and that's one of the things that I've like definitely expressed is like don't let Revit or don't let you dictate what it does. Just use it properly. You know.
right. The other thing that I learned is psychology, a little bit about psychology, trying to get people to trying to persuade people into a certain way is an art. So I would say that's been my focus over the last five five-ish years is just developing people and focusing more on relationships rather than the technical side of things.
Figuring out how to motivate people.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. When you figure it
persuade,
out, let me
motivate.
know.
But I think the thing that it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it's not one conversation of me trying to convince you to do things. You got to plant little seeds and come back and water them later on, and eventually
Yeah.
people will come around.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a big help in a lot of BIM spaces when you create that collaboration or you have a great team that
Yeah,
wants to be there and do the work. It's fantastic, and I think you're definitely doing a great job there at BIMTM doing that, especially in
I appreciate
collaborating
that.
and getting those pieces in. So, no, that's it was awesome working there. I definitely got my education fix in teaching people and found a new passion. Well, I guess rekindle an older one. So
Awesome.
when I first went into college, I was going to be a teacher of math and Spanish teacher. My first ever experience at college, and
You speak
I was not good
Spanish?
at. Oh no, I wasn't good. I dropped out of both of them. It was horrible. It was the worst idea I ever had in my life. But teaching has always been something I've wanted to do, and you definitely helped me express that working at BIMTM,
Awesome.
being the educator. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
no, you did a good job. I mean, people appreciated what you did, and I think you got something there.
Thank you. Let's go back to your landscaping job for a minute.
Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah, let's.
In Florida,
What was the best and worst part about being a landscaper in Florida?
um, I didn't do it very long. Just like just like my roofing career, I didn't do that very long either.
You were a roofer in Florida too?
No, I did was a roofer in
Oh,
Wisconsin for like a summer or something like that. But
yeah.
landscaping in Florida is literally the worst thing you could think of. In the middle of the summer, I think it was like 110, 120-degree days. You're drinking water, like shoveling mulch, and like half of it's sticking to your leg because you're a Wisconsin boy, just dying.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I remember days where like you'd literally see like spots of colors because you're so dehydrated, and I'm like leaving work, just like what did I do with my life to get to this point?
That's great.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I imagine any job in Florida that's outside is not fun. So I moved out to Boise, and since moving out here, it has made me weak. Humidity
Oh, really?
is a big problem for me now. For those who don't know, I used to live in Northern Illinois. Go Bears! Um, and
Whatever.
uh, and humidity it was just humid. It's humid all the time. But then moving out here, it's dry heat, and so yeah, I can't imagine Florida weather. Um,
It's awful.
so, what motivated you to start BIMTM? Where did that start? Like, where did that seed get planted? And then, how did you come back and water it and watch it grow?
Oh man, I'm gonna get myself in trouble probably in this conversation. Well, like I said, I've been a BIM director, BIM manager, helping different companies implement it. So it wasn't my first rodeo. Like, um, I did it for structural companies, a handful of structural companies. I helped a couple architectural companies do it, and then I actually worked as a BIM consultant for like a Fortune 500 company for a while. So I
Okay.
helped a large organization implement BIM, and then after being a BIM consultant, I moved over to an electrical subcontractor. And honestly, that's where I think my passion like changed directions. Like I didn't know much about VDC or MEP coordination prior to working at an electrical subcontractor, and I had never really seen how a BIM model could be used. I mean, before that, it was really just how do we spit out construction documents. Um, and as bad as it sounds, the architectural and engineering side doesn't really care too much about how the BIM model is built as long as
Yep.
the PDF looks good.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, you go over to the other side where everything needs to be modeled correct. And we went from design into coordination through utilizing robotic total station, and then eventually prefabbing almost everything that came out of that model. It was like, holy crap, this is awesome. We it was a challenge, though, I'm not gonna lie. When I first got to that company, they had been doing Revit for a bit, but they didn't really have anybody who knew what they were doing from like a template standpoint.
Yep.
And even from an organizational standpoint, they had an idea of what they wanted to do with BIM, but it changed over time. And it was frustrating at times to see just you feel like you would win on a job, but then the dollar amounts didn't quite seem right or whatever. So we learned a lot of challenges along the way, and there was a lot of, it says on our website, there was a lot of late nights where Jared and I were sitting at the office just like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we doing this for somebody who really doesn't care about BIM? When we could go do this for ourselves and help companies who really do care and want to implement things. And at that point, there was a third person, Josh Pizzo, and we joked about the company called J3 at that point. So we were always like, yeah, we were always like, well, J3, when are we going to go start J3? When are we going to go start J3? And I don't know, Josh left at some point, and down the road, things got a little crazy at my last company, and we were like, you know what? We can go do this anywhere. And if this doesn't work, what's the worst thing that will happen? Like, we'll build a whole bunch of relationships, and we'll have to go get a job somewhere else. Like, that's not so bad. So we went and pulled an LLC and a couple different website domains, and 3 years later, here we are.
Yeah. And how scary was that for the first day you'd be like, I'm quitting and starting on my own?
It was scary, but I'm kind of a risk taker anyways. So I think it was probably more scary for my wife and Jared than it was for me. Like, I have a lot of confidence in myself. Like, I know that I'm good at what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just trying to convince everybody else that they needed my help.
Yeah, it was. I remember my experience, and it was a mutual disconnect where we had a separate ways. But I remember putting the feelers out there and getting offers and stuff, and then the conversation with my wife about, well, why don't you just do it yourself? And I was like, that's scary. Like, I don't know what my
Yeah.
next paycheck's going to come in and look like. So, but again, same conversation happened. What's the worst that happens? You make a bunch of connections, you make a big networking, you find a new job, right?
Right.
And now I think that's a kind of a normal thing now where a lot of companies, BIMTM included, a lot of companies where these BIM managers think that, not think, but like know how to do BIM right, are trying to teach everyone else how to do BIM right. I remember having the same conversation with some people when I was BIM manager for a modular factory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, man, we keep getting all this stuff, but it's all crap. It's all,
Yeah.
we literally have to redesign it every time. It's crap. It doesn't work. And I was like, man, I wish I could just tell people how to do it right and wouldn't have an issue. And that's where all this is born. And I think there's going to be a wave of newer companies coming out trying to do that. And some will fail and some will grow. And then you're going to have just a better overall BIM experience as a whole. Because everyone
Agreed.
out there like you are out there teaching people how to do it right. So the next client they go with or the next person they're working with gets that same kind of level of this is what BIM looks like.
Right.
So it's
You
going to
mentioned
happen.
something there. That was honestly one of the things that at my old company that kind of sparked us too. Is we would go through these extreme peaks and valleys. Like, we would get 20 jobs at once, and we were trying to figure out how we were going to get all the work done. And we would use these outsourced companies. Some of them were overseas, some of them were in the States, and every single time we got things modeled in there, or we were getting to deliverable time, stuff was wrong. It wasn't buildable. We would end up having to delete it and start over anyway. So Jared and I were like, well, shit, why don't we just start a company that can actually coordinate, like actually coordinate electrical and mechanical and plumbing content. Because
Yeah.
there's a big difference from putting something in the model and putting something in the model that's buildable and prefabricatable.
Yeah. A lot of people that like even just coordinate in general. And you talking about systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, great. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you have other systems as well that
Right.
people don't think about. Structural systems. You have braces and stuff you can't cut through, even if like I did a lot of lumber construction, and so it was like, yeah, you don't have that many holes in the joist to make to run this conduit in there. What's the other solution? And
Right.
that's not something people think about until it comes to coordination construction time because they're like, oh, just run it through the joist, they'll cut a hole, be totally fine. But then there's all these like rules that say, well, it's got to be this far off the top of the bottom and this far off from the other one and twice as distance from the other circle or the other hole. And then how far into the module are you going? Where are you stopping? Where are you dropping? So a lot of times we had just holes through all of our joists to run all this conduit safely cut holes. And then we'd have to like run a conduit through a joist another way to drop down to going through like a faucet, a soffit, right?
Sure.
And so that's the
Hopefully not a
coordination.
faucet.
No, not a faucet, please God.
Yeah. That's slightly
Interesting though.
different.
Yeah, through a soffit, and that is the coordination level that BIM should be at, not of we'll run conduits in the ceiling and then, oh by the way, we can't run conduits because the guy on site cut all these holes and the inspector said you can't do that. So now
Sure.
what's the solution, right? That's what BIM's
Yep.
supposed to do is help and find those issues. So modeling for fabrication is the only way to model, I would think, in any kind of MEP model. Model for coordination is not a thing. And I know you and I have had actually discussions about this before of do you model with families? Do you model with fabrication parts? What level of detail do you get to? Why don't we up the detail later? And you and I have had these conversations of what works best and what workflow. My
Sure.
opinion was start fabricating from the beginning. And it makes sense what you said as well. Well, what time is allocated? You got that business mindset of what time is allocated to do a coordination and what time is allocated for fabrication.
Right.
So it's just
So
interesting.
maybe it
Yeah.
changes slightly depending on, and that's always my approach is having a conversation with the guy in the field. Like I don't want to waste time going to a fabrication level of detail if they have no intention in fabricating. So if we know they're only going to fabricate 50% of the building, then let's make sure that 50% is correct. The rest of it will be coordinated,
Mm-hmm.
installable, but not necessarily to that level of detail.
Right. You'll know where the panel is on the wall, but how you run your conduit to it's up to you.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing with that too is a lot of times we don't get all the information we need on the front end, which is the
No.
challenge.
No
So,
way.
well, I mean, I'm saying it because because it's a challenge that we all deal with. And a lot of times we have to put a placeholder in the model, and there's the confusion with if you start putting in like fabrication level of detail from the front end, maybe you're wasting time because you're putting in the wrong
Mm-hmm.
the parts and pieces or whatever.
Right.
So my approach is always like the leanest and meanest possible. Like if I'm gonna put some placeholders in there and delete it later on, I'm just gonna whip something in there as quick as humanly possible.
Awesome. Well, we're going to take it a little lighter here. You mentioned earlier you're kind of a nerd, gamer.
I don't remember saying that, but yeah, no,
So,
yeah.
what was the game of choice? And what
Growing
was the,
up,
yeah,
all hands down, it was Age of Empires for me.
Age of Empires, classic
Yeah,
PC.
played the
I was a Warcraft
whole.
guy. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Warcraft guy. But
I
Age of
lived in
Empires,
front of
great.
my computer for a good part of my life. Age of Empires, all of them. Not the last one so much, but
I feel like if you were to ask a lot of big managers, we're all a bunch of nerds here. We'd
yeah.
all get on like the old school LAN parties and just
Mm-hmm.
have a great time and just talk BIM. I'm gonna do
We
that one
used
day.
to
We're
do
gonna get all
that.
together, do a big LAN party and a big podcast at the same time.
I don't
Comment
think
down below
LAN
if you'd like to
parties
see
are
that.
a
We'll
thing
set that up.
anymore.
um,
Technology has helped with that,
so
fortunately.
yeah, I know, right? We'll figure it out. You had a passion for mechanical bikes and cars and stuff. is that passion still there? Have you explored any of that before? Have you gotten back into that at all? Or did that kind of die when you got into BIM?
Um, it didn't die when I got into BIM. I think it just died over time because cars and bikes cost a lot of fucking money. Got
What are you
cheaper
talking
hobbies.
about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
bikes
yeah.
and cars are expensive, man.
I gotta pick one. It's golf or cars for me. I gotta pick one or the other. They're about the same cost when it comes to the cars I pick.
Golf or cars?
Yeah, that's my two picks. So it's new set of clubs or a brand new car in the driveway, or brand
Oh,
new to me, busted, but brand new to me.
it's a tough choice.
Jeff, I appreciate you coming on today. It was great talking to you.
Absolutely. Same with you,
I'll have to
man.
have you. I'll have to have you and Jared on at the same time. We'll talk more about
That'd be
BIMTM,
cool.
what you guys are coming up. I'm gonna have you stick around for a little bit.
Okay.
Everyone, if you like listening to the Strive Summit podcast, feel free to like, subscribe to YouTube, LinkedIn, and all our socials. I'm on TikTok and Facebook and Insta. Just pick one, and then we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you. See ya.